Welcome back to Financial Independence 101. This is Mike. Today I want to talk to you about the minimum wage debate, and we're really going to focus on this California adjusting their minimum wage for fast food workers only from $16 an hour to $20 an hour. We're going to see the positive benefit and the negative benefit, which the negative far outweighs it. We're going to discuss what's gone on in this first week that they've increased the minimum wage in California. Yes, I do understand inflation is wildly out of control. They do not have it controlled. Definitely not enough to lower interest rates yet. And with that, people do look for any opportunity to make more money. But is raising the minimum wage truly the answer? We're going to get talking about this coming up. Now, first thing you're going to hear when you hear people talking about the minimum wage is that it hasn't gone up in a while. It's time to raise it. But that even should not be the debate. The debate should be, why do we even have a minimum wage? Why don't we abolish it? That's the real debate. That's the real discussion here. So when you look at this, back in 1938, what was going on back then? That's around the time of the Depression, 25 cents an hour in the 1938 Act, and subsequently gone up since then. And that's the beginning. Obviously, we've gone way higher since then. And you also have to take into account, do you remember when sodas were a nickel? Let me tell you the truth, I don't either, because I never saw that. Here we go. In 1978, it was $2.65 an hour. And then up to 2009, we're at $7.25 an hour. Now, I was able to oversee a minimum wage increase in 08 and 09 subsequently. I have an example I drew up of what it looked like internally in a restaurant when a minimum wage increase goes into effect. So I'm going to go ahead and showcase that right now. Now, it's kind of a crude chart I made here to show or convey what's going on. Before the minimum wage increase or something, I was allowed a budget on around $50,000 in sales, $10,500 for labor. That's the total amount to spend on labor if I made a schedule. So I roll a schedule over, exact same schedule, exact same forecast projections. And after the minimum wage went into effect, the increase, I was allowed $200 more. So you're sitting there thinking, well, that sounds really good. You got $200 more from the company. You stuck it to the company. Well, here's the thing. You lost 20 hours. Now, you got to understand, some of those hours were server hours, which are much lower. And those, I don't think the server hours changed in California. But you have to go and pick and choose what 20 hours you're going to trim out of your business to take care of the same number of customers and guests and have the same level of operation as you did 1 week ago, simply because of the minimum wage increase. And this is like a $1.40, $1.50 increase versus something proposed anywhere from $3 to $5 to, if we try to keep up with California, $13 increase. So it's really crazy. These numbers would be astronomical if we institute even a $15 minimum wage. And I do believe they would do step ups just like they've done in the past. But you can see right here, this doesn't look like a huge change, but 20 hours is a big deal in a week. So cutting hours is the first thing companies do when a minimum wage increase is forced on them. And I'm going to say it's forced on them. They didn't have a say in it. They weren't allowed to. And you might say, well, who cares about companies? Well, if they don't make a profit, they can't pay their employees and they go out of business, right? So raising prices is the second thing that all businesses do. And it's a tough challenge for raising prices, especially in the restaurant industry, because you're going to see people getting priced out of eating out in California. Eating in fast food in California is going to be priced out because of this minimum wage increase. But when you raise prices, you end up affecting traffic, meaning that people that come in and eat, they're just used to eating for a certain amount, and then it's just too expensive for them to do that as frequent as they used to. They come in and visit you less and less and less. And here is a chart that shows that. Now, already before this minimum wage increase, we saw this. We saw a 4.5% decrease in January for quick service restaurants. Now, quick service restaurant, fast food, it's a lot of different restaurants would classify in this category that you might not even think about, but still, traffic's down. These restaurants are already struggling. The industry's already challenged. They have a lot of challenges, and you don't realize what happens when traffic's down. You start to see store closures. So that's another issue that we're all going to have to deal with, and that's actually going to hurt a lot of people. That's going to hurt a lot. So there's this restaurant, Foster's Freeze Outlet in Lemoore. Then they're shutting down. This article here says they thought it was the April Fool's joke, but they just flat out could not pay their workers, and they have the issue of raising prices, losing business. They're already struggling to get by, and this was the straw that broke the horse's back for this restaurant. But what you're not seeing is how many franchisees are going to be shutting down their least profitable, or what's now going to be unprofitable restaurants because of this price balance is going to be out of balance and out of whack. And there already are closures of restaurants because they're not able to make a profit. Now they're going to be forced to pay more, and they're trying to figure out how they can stay in business. Now the third thing that really happens is long-term employees that already make more than the new minimum wage that's getting increased to don't get a subsequent direct raise. Most businesses can't afford to say, okay, we're upping the minimum wage by $7 or $4. You're getting a $4 raise, so you're already making $20. Now you're making $24. They might be able to squeeze out $1, but with that, you get a long-term employee that's worked their way up, and they're making money, and they're really proud of themselves for sticking with a job and having a high level of proficiency and doing a really good job and making a decent wage. And now everybody else that's just walking in the door is going to make almost what they're making, but they have to pick up the slack for these people for a while till they gain proficiency. The new people gaining proficiency, and they have to train them. But here's the other problem, is that there's going to be less and less and less new employee jobs, like entry-level jobs for teenage kids that have never had a job before, and you could say unskilled work, but this is going to be an issue. So there are positions that don't really generate more than $7 an hour, $8 an hour for the business. And to say that you have to pay someone $20 an hour to do $7 an hour worth of work, it's not really something that is sustainable. And you would say, okay, well, you have to automate all that out, which we're going to talk about. And they are actually going to do that. So they start automating that out. And you're going to see that there's less and less and less opportunities for 16-year-old kids entering into the workforce. And that is a problem. And say you could come in and you can do that job of taking an order, or you're the one just dropping the French fries. You're doing one job that you're generating $7, and you're going to have to generate way more than $7 an hour worth of work, but the work is going to generate and be worth you being in there for $7. The way it usually works in a restaurant is that you start out at a lower position and you want to aspire to be a cook, but you've never cooked before. So that is a financial burden that the company has to take as training you till you become proficient to learn how to cook. And that is one of the things that entry-level employees do another job, and until they show that they are worthy of being trained to be a cook, that they are reliable, that they're going to show up, that they're competent, that this is somebody I want to invest all this money into training. That's the way it works. But we're going to lose that opportunity, and a lot of these people are not even going to be looked at. You have no experience. Sorry, not interested. That's when you get into the automation, the whole automation side of things. And this is something that's really interesting. Just for me, I'm intrigued by it because 24 years in the restaurant industry, and I've never really seen anything like this in person. But this is a whole $20,000 setup for fryers so that they can automate your frying of certain things. I'm guessing everything in this particular restaurant that gets fried, but it is interesting. It does take up quite a bit of space, and it is kind of separated off from workers. Now you're going to have one worker manning this, like making sure everything's filled, all the bins are filled, the freezer area, and just making sure that everything's still running smooth as it goes. But they say they're automating to take boring tasks off your hand. The reality is that they're automating so that they can save money in the long run. Because one of the things that was reiterated by the people that developed this is that you pay an employee on average $20,000 a year. That's how much this system costs to put into your restaurant. So technically for a one-time cost, then you can lose that employee forever. Now, one of the things that you're going to notice is that the corporate world is already preparing for this. And they're not going to be hurt, like Walmart's and Target's. And some McDonald's are preparing for this. But see, that's not really what they're preparing for. What it really is, when you start seeing that McDonald's, Starbucks, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Aetna, Walmart, IKEA, Costco, and others are already paying more than the minimum wage for their states or anywhere, they are using the market forces. This is the free market forces at work. And if they can't find help for $7.25, then they got to start trying to hire for 8 or 9 or 10 or 11. And in a lot of cases, Target's hiring for 15, starts you off the street for $15 untrained. And there's other restaurants doing the same thing. There's Walmart's getting up there, not quite as much as Target, but free market is already working. And so mandating that you do a $15 minimum wage is almost unnecessary right now. But the net problem with this is that small businesses that aren't as big as these large corporations, they don't have the deep pockets, can't afford to pay that just yet. Those jobs would be wiped out. The small business just wouldn't be able to afford it, as we saw in that example earlier. All right, so Harvard study that they did, $10 minimum wage would cost 500,000 jobs. And then, of course, at 15, far more, and at 20, far more than that. And with that, it would have devastating outcome for each $1 increase in the minimum wage results in a 4 to 10% increase in the likelihood of a restaurant closing. So there's so many devastating outcomes to raising minimum wage. But do those people truly get helped? Do the people that are actually getting paid $20 an hour now, are their lives better? Now, this is a Harvard study, and obviously it's not for every single job everywhere, but they say that according to their study, hours per week dropped for the people that got a minimum wage increase. And that's not going to be exactly carried over for everybody. And if you're in this situation and you see your hours cut, oh, now I'm going to make $20 an hour, but instead of working 35, I'm only going to be working 28. What you do is you just watch all the other people quit around you until that company, your company, needs you to start stepping up to 40 or 50 hours a week. You start seeing overtime at that new wage rate. That's what you should do. That's the advice that I give. Or let me just put it this way. I guess I'm not allowed to give advice on YouTube. So my advice is I would do that if I was in that situation where I got a pay raise to $20 an hour and I watched other people around me quitting because they were losing hours because the business could not afford to give out those hours. And I'd work every hour I could once they were shorthanded. And so that's one of those things. It's also going to be harder for them to find help. You'd think it'd be easier to find help, but now everybody in every restaurant's forced to pay 20. So these workers have more options to leave your business. And there's a lot of different angles to this, but the bottom line is most workers worked less hours and got a smaller paycheck after this increase. So I'm curious what you think about this. Do you think that free market should be allowed to work in the free market forces and companies pay employees what they're worth? They pay their employees based on if they can't staff their restaurant for $8, they need to start paying 10 or 12. Or should they be federally mandated to pay $20 an hour no matter what, no matter the productivity level of those employees? You let me know what you think in the comments below. I can tell you right now that no minimum wage or just leaving it the way it is the best for our country, especially with this inflation. I'm kind of concerned about the rampant inflation that would come from another minimum wage increase. We already have a ton of inflation, and this would cause yet even more inflation. But let me know what you think. Like, subscribe. Financial Independence out.